Hello boys and girls and everyone in betwixt, I'm Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet, and today's video might be a controversial one. This is a topic that seems to have people quite passionate, to the point of almost puritanical conservatism, where people don't want things to change because they kind of like the way they are now. In some ways I find this passion endearing, because I am also passionate about Magic the Gathering and the formats that I love, and I think passion is good. I think liking things is cool and should be hip, and for as long as I draw breath I will try my fucking hardest to make sure that people are happy and excited to like and be passionate about the things that they like. I actually grow a little bit tired of the people who are too cool to care, or too intellectually lazy to engage with topics like this around their hobby. Some might say life is too short. And I agree, life is too short. It's too short not to give a shit. It's too short not to get involved or be passionate or enjoy things. So fuck that, enjoy what you like. So in this video I'm going to talk about these. These are hybrid mana symbols. I'm going to contextualize them within the wider Magic the Gathering context where it currently sits within Commander, and then explore the conversation around it. Now, full transparency, I am super for changing how Commander deals with hybrid mana symbols. I think a simple line of text will allow people to play hybrid cards in their decks. I think that would be a good thing. Before we get to that point, let's talk context. It began as a mechanic introduced on Ravnica, a mana symbol that can be paid for with either of the colours presented in its cost. The Guild Mages are a great example of this cycle, of this mechanic, although each of the original Guild Mages served to also illustrate a complexity in how these cards could work in Commander. Each one of them has an activated ability from each of its colours. Each of these abilities can only be paid with the actual mana of its associated colour. Azorius Guild Mage, for example, is one of my favourites because it's so unique. It's a hybrid card that is both blue and white, and it can be cast with any combination of blue or white mana. However, it has the ability to tap a creature in white and has the ability to counter an activated ability in blue. Beyond the Guild Mages, we see other clearer cases in this set without the costed abilities, a favourite of mine being Jin Illuminatus, a hybrid blue-red creature that gives spells replicate. Fun fact, I include this in all my early Commander decks. Prior to the precons, I played like Niv Mizzet, Scion of the Ur-Dragon, all back in the day before precons even existed, as I like the idea of giving lightning bolts or lava spikes or even card draw spells replicate. Alas, I can only, under current rules, do that in red and blue decks combined. The Jin is not allowed to be played in mono red decks, for example, even though I think it would give it a fun building space to make burn decks more interesting. We then return to the mechanic with Shadowmoor Block, bringing with it colourless coloured hybrid cards like Reaper King, Beseech the Queen, and Flame Javelin. With these cards, the second way to pay for them, instead of it being another colour, was multiple colourless mana. Any deck could cast a Beseech for 6 generic colourless mana, but only a black deck gets to cast it for less. These cards, much like the Guild Mages, again bring up some talking points and complications to an otherwise pretty clear-cut talking point. I will circle back to these a little bit later on. Both of the following Ravnica blocks, even the most recent one, came back to utilise hybrid mana again as a way of showing off the duality of guild members and the relationship between the colours, notably giving us the subtly format warping monster that is Deathrite Shaman. Subsequently banned from Legacy and Modern for making mana bases of decks simply too good in combination with fetch lands, a problem that I think has a residual bad energy associated with it when it comes to the conversation around hybrid cards in Commander. We shouldn't exclude Shards of Alara as well, which utilise the mechanic to ease the stress of 3-colour mana bases on both the limited and constructed environments of the time. One of my favourite Commander cards from that time period is Slave of Bolas, a card that can currently only be played in a Grixis deck. Meanwhile, for 60-card constructed play, the most powerful of cards here was certainly Thopter Foundry, a value engine that goes infinite very easily with the card Sword of the Meek. And then lastly we have Fate Reforged, bringing us super interesting use of hybrid mana, multiple legendaries and exciting mythics with hybrid mana costs in their text boxes. Taking Alesha as a prime example here, she's a mono-coloured, mono-red creature, but her colour identity is Mardu due to the symbols in her text box, allowing her to lead up a Mardu deck into battle. This was an ingenious way of implementing new 3-colour commanders that explored super interesting spaces that could still be played in standard and 2-colour decks without forcing players to have 3-colour mana bases to play them. It's quite important to note that by the time we got to Fate Reforged, the precons were in full swing, Commander was a thing, it was fully endorsed by Wizards of the Coast, and these cards may have been designed with Commander in mind. Funnily enough though, at that time, 3-colour rares were so pushed, and then combined with fetch lands and fetchable jewels, everyone just played a 3 or 4-colour mana base anyway. But hold up, I mentioned a thing called colour identity a moment ago, and I don't want to take for granted that everyone is on board with this idea or knows what it is. Although heaven only knows I've literally had 20 plus people try to explain this fucking thing to me on Twitter whilst talking about hybrid mana, as if somehow reminding me how the current rules work would convince me that hybrid mana was a bad idea. Colour identity is a core element of EDH as a format. It is a rule not found elsewhere in Magic, one thought up by Sheldon Meanery and co. to help regiment and define how decks can be constructed in Commander. Now, I want to clear something up here. I often see bubbling like anti-Sheldon or anti-rules committee sentiment in comment sections and similar, and I believe this is born out of people caring a lot about the format and being frustrated when the format gets changed. To be perfectly clear, whilst I don't always see eye to eye with the choices of the rules committee, I have zero animosity towards Sheldon. I think for the most part they've done a wonderful job in creating an environment to play Magic in. When I finally got to meet, hang out and chat with Sheldon at MTG Reno, I ended up fanboying a little bit and earnestly thanking him for what he's brought me and brought to Magic. Without Commander, I don't know if I would have stuck with Magic like I did over the years, and subsequently whether I would even be making videos right now. So colour identity of a card is denoted by the mana symbols that are present on said card. So a card like Alessia, whilst only red in game mechanic terms, is red, white and black in terms of identity. Burial Rites, one of my favourite cards ever printed, is a black card, but its colour identity is both black and white due to the cost of its flashback cost being white. Now why does this exist? Well, it informs how you build your Commander deck, or what you're able to build in your Commander deck. All cards in the 100 need to be within the colour identity of your chosen Commander, so Kakusho cannot play Burial Rites because Rites is black and white, whilst Kakusho is a commander in black. Again, to use Alessia as an example, Alessia can have Burial Rites and Lightning Bolt in her deck because she is all of those colours. Meanwhile, Torbrand cannot have an Alessia in his deck because she is, in terms of identity, red, black and white. And this is where hybrid cards become controversial, or at least a point of tension in the EDH community. A hybrid card like Kitchen Finks, for example, is both green and white from a gameplay mechanics perspective. It is also at time of writing both green and white in terms of colour identity. However, there are people like myself that believe this is unnecessarily restrictive and would like it to be changed. Allow me to elaborate. I want to preface my sort of suggestion or my case by saying that I want to preserve the spirit of EDH. I believe that restrictions should exist and they do breed creativity. However, I don't know why when I'm building a Thalia EDH deck I can't play Kitchen Finks. Kitchen Finks is a card that I've played in Modern, Canlander, Cube, and once upon a time, probably incorrectly, in Legacy in my own mono-white decks. Whilst Kitchen Finks is a green-white card under the rules, the very nature of hybrid mana suggests that it doesn't need any green mana to be cast. I literally do not need a single green producing land on my deck to cast it. Finks is essentially a modal spell that is often mono-white in terms of how you cast it or apply it as a tool. Of course, it is still green in play for the sake of cards like Mirren Crusader or Deathmark, but it doesn't matter in terms of deck construction, tool choice, or application of said tool. For these reasons, I ask, why is Commander the only place in all of Magic the Gathering where the arbitrary nature of the existing rules means that hybrid cards actually don't function the same as they do elsewhere? They function literally differently, and I find that weird. I don't really understand why we have this. Look at it this way, if I were to cut a Finks across the palm of its hand, will it not bleed the same as a Thalia or a Mother of Runes? But it also might survive said cut, thanks to the buff of an Honor of the Pure. That's right, my friends, it's a fucking white card. The upsides are numerous, and giving colours access to new cards like green getting Spitting Image or red getting Gin of Illuminatus, giving them new areas to explore in terms of deck building and gameplay is only a good thing in my eyes. And also it makes it more likely that people get to play with the sweet cards they enjoyed as a kid or at college, or tick that one box they simply couldn't tick with another available tool. Anything that gives players more choice without changing the game on a fundamental level is something I will strive for, and I mean that. I understand that this is a change, but I believe it is not a fundamental one. I am simply suggesting, and this is my case in a nutshell in one sentence, that hybrid mana can be considered both or either for the purposes of colour identity. Now, I do understand there are some clear complications in terms of how we implement hybrid mana in EDH. Firstly, the activated costs. Remember that format warping Deathrite Shaman I mentioned earlier, or perhaps the Azorius Guildmage? I still believe that we should check a card for other mana symbols to identify it. This means that Deathrite Shaman can't be in a mono black deck due to it having green mana symbols here, and Azorius Guildmage can't randomly give white the ability to counter your equipping of Sword of Fire and Ice off a Chromatic Lantern because it won't be able to be included in a mono white deck. Personally, I would love not to have to make this concession, but there are 3 reasons we have to make that concession. Firstly, I don't want to give decks access to things they shouldn't really have for the most part. There's a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, I don't want white being able to counter target abilities with a blue ability on a white creature. That's just kind of dumb. Secondly, we aren't changing the rules drastically or fundamentally. We're just saying that with simple line of text, that hybrid mana is counted as either or and for the purposes of colour identity. And thirdly, this is more of a talking point. We wouldn't have to make this concession of checking for all the other mana symbols on the card, like with Azorius Guildmage and stuff, if it weren't for the fact that decks can now produce color mana outside the mana identity. It used to be that a white deck couldn't make blue mana for a Chromatic Lantern, it used to become colorless, but that was very clunky. It was a completely fresh rule that was part of Commander. It didn't click with the rest of Magic, so they changed it to click with the rest of Magic, and that's why I think hybrid cards as well should click with the rest of Magic. They should be playable just like they are in every other format. To clarify, I'm saying that the only rules change we make is to hybrid mana symbols. Any other symbol of the card, sorry fam, those function like they always did and they're not coming in. The other complication to this rule set is cards like Beseech the Queen and Reaper. Yes, they would all become playable in all decks, but really, who actually gives a shit? Except for those with a Puritan aesthetic approach, where the mana cost in a mono blue Urza deck upsets them, this matters very little to anyone. These cards aren't even that good. Every deck now has access to Beseech, a 3 to 6 mana tutor that can't often get what you want. I just don't see this being a problem. Even if I were to be proven categorically incorrect, and that is quite possible, I'm not saying I know everything, then we can just ban Beseech. That way all the other cards come into EDH in a much more easily playable way, and Beseech is gone. No one will miss Beseech the Queen. I don't want that. I'm much more in the camp of ban as little as possible. We ban cards that cause problems, except for Flash. That card, for some reason, at time of recording, is still legal in spite of problems. I'm really trying not to be flippant about decks having Beseech or Flame Javelin, but I just can't see it causing a problem beyond the aesthetic or flavour argument. And ultimately, that's something you can personally choose not to play, right? Let others have their fun. Let others have access to those cards. You don't have to play them. I'm quite adamant that Cyclonic Rift is bullshit, but I'm not really actually for banning it. I may have said this in the past, but I've changed my mind. Banning it is a bad idea. I don't play it, but other people should be able to. So let's talk counterpoints. I put a tweet up on Twitter asking people to come to me and tell me exactly why they believe hybrid mana is such a problem. And to be honest, the reason I put that tweet up is that up until that point, a lot of the reasons people were giving me just didn't fly. They were just kind of not very good. They didn't hold any water. The first, most overwhelming one is the Sanctity of Commander. Commander is great and it works, and why try to fix something that isn't broken? Basically, all summarising to this point. Something I've learned from this whole thing is that colour identity as a rule is something that people really believe in and really love. And Commander is unique in having that build around aspect, and I think we should look to preserve that. The thing is, I don't think hybrid mana is the crack in that armour that many people are making it out to be. I think the idea of just sticking to what you know and not questioning it or looking to improve or reiterate is dangerous, it's damaging. If we were like that about everything, nothing would ever improve. I believe that colour identity is important, and I believe that it needs to be kept, and the build-on aspect of EDH is one of the most important things of EDH. But I also believe that people should just be able to play with their hybrid cards. This leads me to my next point, which is that restrictions breed creativity, which again is a statement that I totally agree with. I just don't believe bringing approximately 600 hybrid cards into Commander is going to restrict that creativity in any meaningful way. If anything, it's just going to open up some small pockets of design or brewing space. In the grand scheme of things, 600 cards is a small drop in the ocean compared to all the cards that are added to Magic every year. That small drop opens up some new space for some people without damaging the restrictions that are already in place. And the next point is slippery slopes, right? People keep saying there's a slippery slope here. Heuristic Studies replied saying the more we chisel away at those limitations, the more it loses its charm. I respect and admire Sam immensely, but this language suggests that this is but the beginning of an erosion. That is the first chip of the chiseled fundamentals of the format. And I have to frankly say, and bearing in mind I love Sam, we've hung out before, I've gushed about how much he's influenced me as a creator, but I have to say with all due respect, my friend, that's bollocks. There are many, many more making the case of what's next? Where do we go from here? Will there be rioting in the streets? And it's fascinating that people are thinking this is going to be some sort of slippery slope towards the fact that we don't have commanders anymore, that I can have, a goldfish as my commander, literally an actual goldfish. We are looking to implement hybrid mana within the idea of current colour identity. No one is asking for Phyrexian mana, as some people are claiming. No one is saying that like a black pipped devoid card should be in a mono blue deck. I even did a quick search just to see if like Phyrexian mana was being talked about with regards to any of this, and no. No one is saying that they want Gutshot in their mono green deck. No one is saying they want Surgical in their mono blue deck. That's not a thing that anyone's really talking about. Why? Because it's quite clear that Surgical is a black card and Gutshot is a red card. No one wants that. The only people actually bringing up this whole slippery slope Phyrexian mana nonsense are the people that are fighting against hybrid mana, and that's what you call a straw man. That's just what you call a straw man. Like, what? Next you'll be demanding that we give you all blowjobs. Like, no one's asking for that. Stop it. Regularly, people are saying it will create more colour pie breaks in Commander, allowing white to draw cards, perhaps off of Augury Adept, for example, which would just be, wow, the shock and the horror of allowing that. This seems to be a two-pronged discussion, one from like a mechanical balancing perspective, and one from an aesthetic Vorthos flavour perspective. From a balancing perspective, can Augury Adept really push white over the edge? Will Beseech the Queen ruin the format? Well, my answer to that is so. If you were worried about Augury Adept, I don't think you can see the overpowered broken forest for the great hen-shaped trees. To make it a bit clearer, Commander is full of broken shit. Like, full of broken shit. Colour pie breaks. Every colour pie break, everything that Marrow says is a colour pie break now exists in Commander. It's kind of the beauty of it. Much like Legacy, it's where mistakes go to die. With that said, only a handful of the hybrid cards could even be considered actual breaks. The majority of them can function as a monocolored card because that's how they were designed by the design team that made the game. If the cards already exist by the designers of the game, then I don't know why those toys are being restricted so heavily, when in reality they still function like monocolored cards. Then there's that like aesthetic, flavour perspective, and I get it. Some people don't like that kind of thing, I completely understand, but I mean ultimately how I see flavour discussions is just don't play it yourself and let others do that. Like, I think if you're really into flavour, why would you allow a Sisay player to have Elishnorn in their deck? Because I'm pretty sure the Weatherlight crew were super not into Phyrexia. Like, super not into it. I just don't buy flavour or aesthetic purity as a reason to not allow them. I get that you might not like it. I don't like some of the new frames. I think the Amonkhet masterpieces look like shit. But would I say you can't play them in a deck because they don't look like Magic cards? No. It's the same reason I was telling people not to give each other shit over the new Theros lands. You might not like them, but let other people like the things they like. I just don't think flavour holds enough weight to not allow people to play with cards they like. That seems the opposite of inclusivity which we strive for as a community, right? Then we come to the most realistic point of all of them. It's kind of on the overpowered power level thing again, but it's the idea of staples, and homogenization. It's quite clear that Murderous Redcap and Kitchen Finks go infinite with relative ease. Normally as part of a three-part combo. A sack outlet and a Grum Gully plus either of those cards is infinite life or infinite damage. It's clear to me that those packages would be included in a lot of creature-based combo decks or people who want to combo off. But that said, there's already many 2, 3 or 4 card combos out there that people play already. I don't think that's really an issue. I guess it'd be quite ironic if Kitchen Finks and Murderous Redcap were banned, if this ever went ahead. And I'm the one here going, I just want to play Kitchen Finks my Thalia deck. And it turns out that was not the thing that got Finks banned. Again, I'm all about letting people play with their cards, so I think bannings are not where we want to go with. If this would actually result in multiple bannings, then I would consider it being a bad thing. I just don't think it would. 3-card infinite combo? Who gives a fuck? Honestly, it's Commander. The format is bonkers as it is. Is it better than any 3-card combo that currently exists in Commander? Genuinely? I doubt it. On the topic of the homogenization, don't forget that there were new cards being printed all the time. Wizards of the Coast of printing new cards pushed to be as powerful as fucking possible. Great Henge being the best example of that recently for Commander, right? So I don't think that just allowing cards that already exist to be played in more decks is going to create as much homogenization as the creation of Arcane Signets and Great Henges and other dumb cards like that. I don't think we need to worry about Dovescape. The final point is complexity. And this again is one of the more valid counter-arguments. We should strive to make the game as accessible and understandable as possible for newer players. We should make all the formats sort of transfer skills to one another. This is the main reason that the mana change happened that I mentioned earlier, but now a mono-white deck can make green or blue mana for Chromatic Lantern, to make mana perform the same way across formats. It's one of the reasons that I think hybrid cards should be allowed, is because I think they should function like they do in other formats. It happens to me quite often where I will put together a load of cards that I'm thinking of putting into a Commander deck, and then, I think someone looked through a deck that I put together recently, and they're like, Vince, you've included Kitchen Finks in this mono-white deck, and I was like, whoops, sorry, it makes the shortlist of all the other singleton formats that I play, Oslander and Canlander and stuff. I forgot. I forgot that hybrid mana wasn't allowed because, woe forbid. I also think that adding one singular neat line, so that hybrid mana can count as either of the colours or both. I think that's just as much complexity as we had now, where we have to explain, no, it can't count as either of the colours or both. That's just as complex. It's just as complex as someone's playing their favourite, I don't know, one of the old demigods, or whatever the fuck they were called, what's it called? Lieges. The lieges from Eventide. And you're like, sorry, Jimmy, your Balefire Liege isn't allowed to be played in your mono red deck, so get fucked, you scrub. But then we have this thing where, like, people keep telling me on Twitter, just use Rule 0, discuss with your playgroup. And to quote, Vince, I have no problem with you playing those cards. Just, you know, talk to your playgroup beforehand. But no, don't change the rules! And I think this is bollocks. I think Rule 0 is good and useful, but I don't think it's fit for all purposes. For someone like myself, where the majority of the Commander up until recently that I played, before the pandemic, was at Magic Fests and on Magic the Gathering Online, having a cohesive rule set is important. I don't want to go to a Magic Fest with a deck that, like, half of the time that they don't want to play with. And even if you peel back from that, I'm going to a game store regularly when we're not in a global pandemic, and I don't want to get down there and have one dude in the four of us say, sorry, I don't want you to play with those cards, and then this deck that I've took time putting together, ordered cards online, sleeved up, put in a deck box, took down to the store, and now it's sat in my bag and I feel like a twat. I also don't want to have people not willing to say no, right? Like, they're like, oh, he's a YouTuber. Or like kids not wanting to say no. They're like, they're too young or too underconfident to say, you know what, I don't like you playing with hybrid cards, can you say no? I'd rather, if we try to use Rule 0 where we can, but on the whole have a cohesive rule system that allows everyone to play on even pegging. I want to leave my house and Timmy to leave his house. As we both go towards the game store, I want us to both be going with a mutual understanding of what we're getting ourselves into. That when we get there, using an assured document, some rule system that we can play Magic together. Because if we have to do this discussion thing every time, if even sensible rules changes, I believe the hybrid change is sensible, is a thing that we can't possibly touch upon because Commander's so fucking perfect, then what's the fucking point in having a rule system in the first place? In short, I want people to stop sometimes and question whether or not their favourite format, like Commander, is perfect. Because often it won't be. And one of the beautiful things about Commander is that it isn't perfect. It is a living, breathing, grassroots movement. A home-brewed format by Sheldon and Co. And the idea that people think right now that a colour identity and the rule system as is perfect is crazy. Some people are like, I don't know, indoctrinated. I'm not saying he's got a cult of personality, but Sheldon, you've got a cult of personality. But all jokes aside, I don't get how people think that it can't be improved upon through reiteration or growth. And I'm not even saying that my change is the way to improve it. I may be wrong in this conversation, and I understand there are a lot of people who disagree with me. But I'm just asking people to stop and think sometimes about Magic and say, you know what, this is right or this is right, and have that conversation. Don't be that person on Twitter who's like, no, you've always got to complain about something. Because that's the weirdest take. That's the weirdest take. Just telling people not to criticise or discuss things. What the fuck are you on a social media network if you don't want to discuss things? You piece of shit. That wasn't directed at anyone in particular, Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's probably way longer than I expected. I ended up elaborating a bit more than perhaps I should have done. Hit that subscribe button, like it, and by all means, please, tell me in the comment section below what you think. A, it helps with the algorithm, and B, I am interested. I'm genuinely interested to see how many people agree or disagree with me, because I feel like I'm in the minority, which is weird. That doesn't happen very often, because I'm just so fucking clever and smart and beautiful that people tend to agree with me.